El día de hoy tenemos una ponencia con una plática, un track con dos ponentes, Capital Humano como Palanca de Innovación y Crecimiento. Y para esto tenemos a Gil Taran, quien es CEO de iCarnegie Global Learning de la Universidad de Carnegie Mellon, y la licenciada Beatriz Ramírez Velázquez, quien es rectora de la Universidad Tecnológica Emiliano Zapata, y es una de las universidades tecnológicas con las que CANIETI ha estado trabajando a través de sus programas. Y la idea es que escuchemos a Gil, primero hablando un poco sobre todo el marco de lo que es capital humano como una palanca para la innovación y el crecimiento, y luego escuchemos a la licenciada Beatriz, rectora, un poco ya aterrizando lo que nosotros estamos haciendo directamente ya con ellos. Entonces, sin más, Gil, adelante, bienvenido, welcome.
So first of all, let me thank Rogelio and Victor and CANIETI and Mexico First for inviting me to speak today in this national conference. It's a pleasure to be here in Mexico and talk about a subject that is very close to my heart and that impacts every one of us, and that is the issue of human capital development. And how do we connect human capital development to the growth of the IT industry, to the growth of a country like Mexico, and how do we achieve competitiveness on a global scale through investing in developing the people who work for us. Now, human capital development and the notion of using this for growth and competitiveness is not something we can talk about in 30 minutes. But at the end of my conversation, at the end of my talk, I'd like to leave you with three things that you can take with you. The first is, why do we want to be competitive? Why is it relevant? Why is it relevant in today's times? Why is it relevant for Mexico? The second, why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult to get where we want to go? And the third is, maybe most importantly, how do we get there? And I can't give you the magic and the secret sauce in 5 minutes, but I can give you a plan that if you, in your organizations, in your companies, in government, in universities, if you were to go out and implement this plan, you would be further ahead than you are today. You would be closer to achieving your goals than you are today. And that plan is something we have implemented together with CANIETI and Mexico First, and Beatriz is going to talk about, in a pilot program that is existing right now in Mexico in the last piece of my presentation. So we all want to be competitive. Why? Well, if you think about this, everybody else is doing it. So if everybody else is doing it, shouldn't we do it also? If we don't, we would be left behind. And we're afraid to stay behind, because if we stay behind, we don't know what's going to happen to us. So we must think about what the other countries around us are doing, and we must think about what others within the country are doing to stay ahead of them all the time. Now, government is trying to drive this change, trying to drive this competitiveness, and that's a good thing, and they're trying to implement it using resources to help industry make that leap towards more competitiveness. But in some ways, it really is the right thing to do, to become competitive, because we're creating a better life for the people we're trying to educate, for the people who work for us. Now, there's some practical reasons why we want to be competitive. We want to grow the industry. We want to create more business. We want to allow people to come to our country and provide to us more projects, more business. Even within the country, we want to do more insourcing. We want to help companies help provide more business to people within the country. We want to position ourselves for a better future. At the end of the day, what we want to do is achieve a better life for the people who live here in Mexico. So competitiveness is a part of that, but the real issue is, what does that mean for us? So if you think about competitiveness, you want to ask yourself the following 3 or 4 questions. If we want to be competitive, what do we have to do to get there? I go to conferences and events where people talk about competition, innovation, growth, entrepreneurism. We all talk about the same words. It seems like this doesn't change from year to year. We're not getting any closer to competitiveness necessarily, even though we're talking about this. Do we even have the right people, the right resources, the right money, the right amounts of talent? And if we have all of those, have we tried implementing things to become more competitive? And if we have, do we know if we're on track? Do we know if we're making any progress? By asking those questions, we're able to think about where we are today and where we want to go to, and what's the delta between these 2 places. And later on, I'll discuss how do we narrow that gap between where we are and where we want to go. Now, when I go to these conferences, these could be in Brazil, in Argentina, in Mexico, in Colombia, in Panama, people tell us the same things over and over again. What do they tell us? Well, we must invest in information, communication technologies. That means the infrastructure. That means making it available. That means making sure people don't have to pay too much to be able to get it. Last week, I was in Africa for a conference like this, where they were talking about education, innovation, ICT, and the internet connection in Botswana, where I was 55 kilobit per second. This was typically what we would find in 1991. So there was no way to send email, there's no way to send text messages, there is no way to use the mobile communication or the wireless network that was there. So obviously the investment, and there's nothing we could do for some of those countries until there's an infrastructure that supports that. So yes, infrastructure is key to be able to get to be competitive, but it's not enough. We are told we need to be innovative in terms of content, in terms of how we conduct research, how we deliver this content. We have to be entrepreneurial. We have to teach the people in the country to think, to be able to make decisions, to be able to solve problems, to be able to build companies, because small businesses build employment, and employment creates growth, and growth creates economic benefits. And we're also told that we need to be able to go and open technology hubs and IT parks. You know, around the world, there are 3,000 IT parks. 90% of them have failed. They're just real estate. Buildings, they're empty, and companies aren't there. So, and we're also supposed to be building a knowledge-based economy. These are all buzzwords, just like strategy and implementation and innovation. These are buzzwords that really, when you think about it, we don't really know what that means. And if we do, we're not closer to getting there. Now, countries around the world discovered that if they want to be competitive, they have to invest in their children. And investing means we need to teach them more science, mathematics, technology. If we want to help them get to be global citizens, we have to teach them languages, primarily English, which is still the business language of the world. Most kids don't want to go and become technologists in the universities. There's a sharp decline in people going into engineering and IT programs around the world. They also don't get the career guidance when they finish school, or the universities. So there's a lack of direction to help them understand what jobs would be better for them. Kids drop out of school at alarming rates. When I met the Minister of Education in Colombia, he said to me that 50% of the people entering the first grade don't continue to the second grade. 50%, okay? Alarming. And if we could solve the retention, if we can keep kids in school, we will be better off. And there's data that supports that as kids have more years of education, they become better employees and they make more money, which ultimately, over their career, which ultimately translates into more taxes for the government. And really, there's no easy fix. Kids want an easy fix with Facebook, with Google, with companies that make it appear as if LinkedIn and Twitter, as if anybody can become an entrepreneur and immediately become a billionaire. Kids want an easy fix. But there is no free lunch. There is no easy fix. There's no way to, and yes, 5 in the world have made it. 10 in the world, 50, 100. But out of 7 billion people, very few have been able to find that golden nugget that allows them to become billionaires overnight. Most of us have to keep on digging. Okay? Why? That's the reality. So we have to take care of more of us, not less of us. Now, if you look at universities, this is globally. This is not just here. It's in the US, it's in Western Europe, it's in the Far East, it's in Africa. Universities typically teach material that is irrelevant because when kids graduate in 4 or 5 years, what they've been learning 4 or 5 years ago may or may not be relevant anymore. So we continuously have to teach what kids would need 4 or 5 years from now. And unfortunately, universities take time to change. They take time to look at curriculums and reevaluate and assess the needs of industry. So there's this gap that continues to be there. It can't easily be closed. They typically don't focus on what employers need. They focus on what they think is important. And I'm not saying that it's either this or this, but it's got to be a combination of what people want out in industry, practical, so they can hire these students, and what the enduring principles of science and technology that need to be taught. We had to have a mix of both of these things. Teaching in different innovative methodologies isn't practiced. We still use the 900-year-old method. I'm the professor, I know everything, you're the student, you know nothing, sit in your chair, listen to me talk, do your homework and take your exam, and you'll be successful. In fact, we have people students in universities be flogged. We have students in universities be flogged for doing work together, meaning exams are individual, homework is individual. And if we do things in teams and in groups, typically teachers don't like it because they need to assess, they need to test individual abilities. So most programs look at individual work. Unfortunately, in industry, we look at teamwork. We don't want individual work. So we punish our students for doing teamwork in most cases, where in industry, we reward it. So there's an issue. And certainly, we don't reward teachers to becoming excellent teachers. We don't give them enough pay, right? So, and you go to different countries and they tell you that the teachers are the lowest paid people. Those teachers who teach our kids to become better employees and have a future are the lowest paid people in the industry. What's the old saying? Those who can do and those who can't teach. So unfortunately, there's a huge gap between what we want to achieve to become competitive and the reality that exists out there in the universities, in the schools. Now, what does that leave you? Well, it leaves you in a situation that's nearly impossible. You can't find enough people to do the work you need to do, and so you might lose on projects, you might not be as competitive, you might need to invest time, resources, people, and money to train people. The big Indian companies, Tata, Infosys, Cognizant, Wipro, all have $100 million campuses where they teach people how to become better employees. And in fact, there's 3 million jobs in India unfilled in the technical sector. They're not unfilled because there's not enough students. They don't want to hire these students. They'd rather hire finance and banking students over IT and engineering students because they believe that these students in the banking and finance can be trained, and the students who come from engineering and IT have already been, in their mind, corrupt, where they can't be trained to learn how to really do the things industry wants them to do. At the end, we're not productive, we're not competitive. Now, what I just told you, you already know. I guarantee you've heard it before multiple times. If I've heard it, you've heard it. And if you haven't heard it, you probably are seeing it in today's work, in day-to-day's work in your organizations. Now, if you know all this already, why are we not there yet? If we know what we need to do, if we've realized what happens in universities, in schools, in industry, we realize what it takes to be competitive, what we have to teach, we should be there. But we're not there yet. Why is it taking us so long? And can we even wait? Do we even have time? So these are the main questions. They're hard questions to answer. I'm going to try and answer these questions right now. So there's three things we need to invest in to be competitive. The first one is technical readiness. We talked about that. Investing in technology. But that is not what's going to save us. The second thing is innovation. Thinking like innovators, encouraging entrepreneurism, encouraging people to be doing things in a different way. New processes, new methodologies, new technologies. But these two aren't enough. The real focus for us is higher education and training. Education and training. It could be higher education training, it could be education and training. The real goal is to invest in making sure that the people we bring up, from children to adults, into the workforce, have what they need to be able to use technology and create the innovations we want them to create. Okay, so what does that mean? If education is the key, let's focus on what we need. So we really talk about educating people not just by subject matter, not just to be an engineer, not just to be a software developer, not just to be a person working in the telecommunication industry. Today we talk about the 4 C's: communications, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking. The skills you need to work as an employee in a global environment with different countries, with different people, be able to understand and think on your own, make decisions, solve problems, work in a team. But teaching this is not enough. We can't teach this unless we teach it in the right way. Meaning, we have to take teachers and teach them how to teach this, so these skills create practical experiences for people when they are learning this. We can't just hope that theory will make people be able to use it. We also must make sure, as we teach these skills, they are taught at the right level. Meaning, we can't just do it at the university. We've got to start early. Just like we teach mathematics, just like we teach sciences, just like we teach language and history, these skills of collaboration, of communication, of teamwork, of analytical thinking and problem solving must be done in a project, practical way from a very young age, so that kids continuously develop these skills. So from kindergarten all the way through the workforce, university and workforce development. And we must invest continuously in research that focuses on education and focuses on the skills that these students will go into and will use when they go back to industry. So they're able to understand the kinds of problems that industry is looking to solve. Now, again, the slide I just showed you exists in many, many places, in many reports. This is not new. The things I mentioned already, people know. You can read reports by the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, different agencies, I'm sure even in Mexico, that talk about what we need to teach. We need to teach it in a different way. We need to teach it at all levels. So why are we not there? What is stopping us from getting there? Well, I've listed here 4 elements which I think are relevant: capabilities, policy, capacity, and resources. In terms of capability, do we have what it takes to be able to create? Do we have in government what it takes to be able to create the right policies? Policies that allow us to change and really revolutionize the educational system. Most educational systems are old, they're big, they're difficult to change, which is why when education ministers come to become education ministers, they find it very hard to reform the system. But reforming the system is what is needed. With pressure from industry, pressure from IT associations, pressure from the actual system itself, and government as a way to facilitate that reform. So, do we have the right people in government, in industry, to be able to push on this change of policy? And if we have a change of policy that allows us to invest more in terms of resources in changing human capital development, changing what is taught, changing how it's being taught, if we have all of those things, can we execute? Do we have the right number of teachers? Let's say there is a policy. Let's say we know what we need to do. Do we have the right people, the right talents, the right number? And if we don't, having a policy doesn't help us. Having goals, by 2020 we will have so many students graduate with so many skills, is useless unless we can get there. And even if we have the right number of people, are we investing enough in terms of infrastructure, finances? You know, today in many countries it's a big buzz of let's give laptops and tablets for people. There's big projects countrywide in Argentina, there's ones in Thailand, there's ones in Colombia, and we get called, once these tablets are provided, we get called to educate these governments and consult these governments about what to do with these tablets. Kids have them, they're loaded with everything you can want. All free software, wonderful things. But teachers aren't educated to use them, students are using them to be productive, and the fact we've invested in technology is only so much useful unless we create a circle that provides the right pieces for the teachers to be able to use it correctly and the students to be able to use it effectively. So these are stopping us from being able to go where we want to go. Now, the key is not to get this perfectly. This is the key. The key, the secret sauce, the magic behind all of this isn't that we have to get it right, and only when we have the perfect plan can we do it. The key is to start and incrementally make sure as we go ahead with what we have, we adjust and we adapt and we develop. The key is to start. We gotta start now. Because guess what? Mexico is facing competition for resources, for projects from countries around it. These countries are thinking the same things we're thinking right here. They're doing the same thing we're doing right here. So we gotta start. And in many ways, CANIETI, Mexico First, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Education has already started. There's plenty of things that are happening, which are wonderful. Continuing this trend is very, very important. So, the last piece of my presentation talks about, okay, so if I told you what we need to do, and I told you what stops you from getting there, what do? How do we get there? And if you look at this slide that I had here before, if I could just get back to it, it has 5 pieces: design, implementation, tracking, reflection, and adaptation. And I'm going to talk about each one of these pieces in a slide or two to explain how we would do something like this. And then bring Beatriz to talk about what we've done as a sample project implementing this sort of methodology. So design. Ask yourself the following questions. I don't care what program you're developing. If it's a big one, if it's something for your company, if it's something for a university, ask yourself this: what do we need? What kind of topics? For how long? At what level? What's critical for us? What is not critical for us? Do we have the right resources? Do we have the right competencies? And if we don't, how do we build them? And if we built this, how do we measure success? How do we know we're going to get there? And if you ask these questions, how would you make this work? Well, you'd build for yourself, in your organization, an objective assessment. You would try to understand the market around you. You would try to understand where you are today and where you want to go. Skills that you have, capabilities that you have. Who are you hiring, and what skills and capabilities do they have? What does the industry around you need today and in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years? If you're in the academic side or the teaching side, what sort of methodologies do you use for teaching? How are students learning today? Are they learning what they're supposed to? And if not, why not? And what technologies are you using to facilitate the learning and make it more effective? And how do you teach people to use those technologies, to select them and to use them so it's more effective? So in your organization, in your human resource development plan, think about those items, conduct an assessment, ask the right questions. The answers you get are based on the questions you ask. Now, once you figure out what it is you want to go and do, you need to implement this. And by implementing it, we're moving from what needs to be done to how to do it. So, we need to make sure we have the right resources. So again, question mode. Do we have the right people? Do we have the right skills? Do we have the right knowledge to implement such a program? Do we have enough of the people we need? And if not, how do we get them? How do we get all of those things? And when you think about these questions in terms of implementation, then here is what you want to do. You want to think about integrating the right set of topics and skills and abilities into curricula, so it's not 2 days here and 2 days here. You want to think about building a program that ultimately brings all of the competencies, all of the skills, all of the knowledge you need in a way that's integrated with the pieces that are being taught right now, so students end up learning both, like I said, the theory, which is already being taught, and the kind of pieces, kind of skills and abilities and knowledge they need to become productive for you in industry. The notion of science of learning. This is a nicer word today than what we used to be calling pedagogy. So the science of learning, how people learn. Thinking how people learn enables us as educators to go out and be able to create impactful experiences, create ways to engage with the student so the student is more motivated to learn. The student is more interested in learning. So we have to help learners understand how to learn better, make them more effective. We also have to help teachers become more effective in teaching. We now have to shift our focus from knowledge and content, which is what it was many years ago, to focusing on teaching and learning, which is what the focus is today. If we focus on teaching and learning and becoming more effective in both teaching and learning, whatever we teach will be more useful, more practically used for people when they go to industry. And again, technology. Technology is a way today to facilitate the learning and making it more effective. Teachers are becoming less and less about knowledge masters and more about people who can practically help a student understand what to do with that information. A student today in any class, and I teach classes at Carnegie Mellon, and a student today probably knows more than I do, because they can go on the internet and find more information at a click of a finger. But they typically are missing the link between that information and turning this into useful, practical pieces. How do we help them use this? We teach teachers how to take information and turn it into useful knowledge. We teach them how to coach, how to mentor, how to go about using students and working with students through a discussion, through a project-based environment to try out different things and to learn through reflection from these different things. Once we pass the implementation, we must ensure on track. And that means we have to understand where we are and are we going in the right direction. So, do we have the return on investment that we're looking for? Are we effective in what we're trying to do? Do we need to adapt and change because the environment around us has changed? Industry changes, the needs change, technology, new technologies are around and they change as well. And all of these things create pressure on the system and on the people who are using these technologies, using that information and knowledge to become practically employable in industry. That pressure creates a need for us to continuously track, measure, and adapt. If we ask these questions, what does that mean for us? Well, we develop a picture of success. We develop ways to measure where we are today and what we want to get to in the future. We continuously evaluate regularly what happens. Are the teachers teaching the right things? Is industry getting the right students? Are the skills and competencies in industries needed today different than what we needed 6 months ago? We build communication channels. We connect industry and IT associations with universities. So the gap between what industry wants and what universities teach is narrowed down. We don't just let universities do what they want. We bring industry to help them define what needs to be taught. And we open these communications. We're not afraid to open communications. If it doesn't work, let's say it doesn't work. Let's fix it. We don't just want to continuously push it, hoping it will work in the future. We don't want to hide. We're not looking to hide from the truth. We build partnerships, associations, industry, companies, government, universities, together. The power of bigger, the power of more. Okay, we could do more if we have partnerships where people talk about together solving this problem. And we drive action. We drive action today and we use it to create real changes and real-time decision-making. We make changes on the fly. We continuously adapt all the time. Why? Because we need to. Because industry needs us to do this. So within universities, within government, we need to build mechanisms for real-time change. Now, once we track this, we get data from the field. Is it working? Is it not working? Is industry happy? Is it not happy? Is it getting what it wants? And if not, why not? We need to reflect. We need to think about what we are learning and understand if it's not working, how would we change what we're doing? How do we optimize our resources? Costs, investments. How do we stay ahead of where industry wants us to go? And what that reflection means for us really is we change our approach. We look at the processes and the methods we've used and we adjust them. We look at the content and what we teach and how we learn and we adjust it. We become, as individuals, as organizations, self-directed organizations. We focus on successes. We focus on failures. We understand where to do, what to do, and what to change. I tell people all the time, when you drive to work in the morning and you get to work in your car, nothing happens to you along the way. You learn nothing. But if you get into an accident on the way to work, you've learned an awful lot. Sometimes learning from failure is the key to our success. And the last piece in this idea is adaptation. What must we continue doing? What must we stop doing? Can we change, and what should we change? Should we add or drop? Or what will the impact be of those changes as we adapt these programs? So we structure the interventions. We identify gaps, and we move them closer. We understand where we're doing good, where we're doing bad. We, through open communication, bring the people to talk. And we create and we schedule changes and methodologies and processes to be adapted and adjusted to what industry wants in one hand, what students are looking for in the other hand. When you think about this, my last two slides for you are this. The first one is the learner is in the center. For us to be competitive, we got to put the learner who is your worker. These are the people who you will hire to be working for you and make you competitive. Put them in the center. 4 elements around them. Continuous evaluation. What do you need them to do? What do they know right now? Where are the gaps? The science of learning. How do we make their learning more effective? How do we teach more effectively? Every one of your organization is a teaching and a learning organization, because every one of you teaches people how to work in your organization. So we got to think about making those learnings and those teachings more effective. We got to teach teachers in universities and schools, but also instructors who train people in industry. We've got to train them to use more effective methods. We've got to bring in technology to make this learning and productivity much more useful for us. It exists, we need to learn how to bring it in and use it in the most robust way. So when you think about this, partnerships is the key. Governments, IT associations in industry, and universities and schools. That's the key to one of these things. And when you think about the future, education to create competitive advantage requires assessments of needs regularly, requires partnerships and involvement of everyone, and open communications, clear measurements, continuous refinement. We're not going to get it right. We better agree right now, it's not going to be perfect, and we've got to start now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gil. Ahora pediría a la licenciada Beatriz Ramírez Velázquez, rectora de la Universidad Tecnológica Emiliano Zapata, nos pueda dar su experiencia de lo que estamos haciendo como Cámara con las universidades tecnológicas, por favor.
¿Qué tal? Buenos días, tengan todos ustedes. Me da mucho gusto tener la oportunidad y el privilegio de poder platicarles qué estamos haciendo desde el subsistema de universidades tecnológicas en este contexto que Gil nos acaba de platicar de innovación, de formación de talento, y quizá lo más importante de esta experiencia que yo les quiero comentar es cómo sí es posible que podamos aterrizar la industria, el gobierno y la academia un proyecto como el que les voy a comentar. Ups. Bueno, algo pasa aquí. Déjenme decirles, seguramente ustedes conocen el subsistema de universidades tecnológicas. Hay más de 100 universidades tecnológicas en nuestro país que están atendiendo a más de 140,000 estudiantes. ¿Por qué una alianza con este gran proyecto que es iCarnegie? Hace aproximadamente 3 años se dio a conocer un informe en donde se expresaba y se externaba cuáles eran los retos que en materia de formación de talento existían. Con una gran visión, la Coordinación General de Universidades Tecnológicas identificó a las universidades que teníamos mayores capacidades para poder incursionar en un proyecto de esta magnitud. iCarnegie, subsidiaria de Carnegie Mellon University, fue en ese momento quien, en este diagnóstico y con el apoyo de muy buenos aliados, como es México First y por supuesto CANIETI, se empezó a trabajar en la construcción de un proyecto para certificar estudiantes y maestros en las universidades tecnológicas. De estas más de 100 universidades tecnológicas en México, se identificaron 34 en el país, que insisto, por las capacidades tecnológicas que hay en sus profesores, en infraestructura, en equipamiento y desde luego por la cobertura que tienen en diferentes zonas de nuestro país. Seguimos con el problema aquí. Sí. ¿Cuáles fueron los beneficios que hace 2 años se vislumbraban dentro de este proyecto? Quizá una de las demandas más sentidas y a menudo más crudas para las instituciones educativas es que el sector empresarial nos manifieste que no estamos formando los talentos que requieren para atender sus necesidades. Y particularmente en el sector de tecnologías de la información, este ha sido un planteamiento permanente, no solo a nivel de la CANIETI, sino en nuestros estados con las empresas que atienden este sector. Una de las primeras prioridades que pensamos que podíamos atender con este proyecto era estar a la altura de las necesidades y los requerimientos del sector de tecnologías de la información. Por supuesto, en este sector que evoluciona y cambia de manera permanente, el contar con certificaciones nacionales o internacionales era también una de las prioridades y de los beneficios más importantes. El uso para nosotros de materiales y contenidos actualizados vendría a dar esta posibilidad que bien platicaba Gil, de estar adaptando, de estar reflexionando y de estar innovando. Y por supuesto, mantener una dinámica de formación y actualización de nuestros profesores. Si queremos talento en nuestros alumnos, necesitamos que nuestros profesores también estén certificados. Les platicaba que a partir del 2012 se hizo este estudio. Aquí podrán ustedes observar la cobertura que hay casi en todo el país. Estos 34 centros recorren todo el país. Y les puedo decir que en este momento contamos con 880 profesores certificados y 3,000 estudiantes. No corre la última. Y 3,000 estudiantes, aquí está. Son 880 docentes certificados y 3,000 alumnos certificados. ¿Cuál es la meta que tenemos para la siguiente etapa de este proyecto? Alcanzar 5,000 estudiantes certificados y poder llegar a 2,000 profesores certificados en todo el subsistema. Quiero decirles que en las universidades tecnológicas y por supuesto con el apoyo de los empresarios de México First, de CANIETI, particularmente ha sido posible aterrizar este proyecto en este contexto conceptual que Gil nos platicaba, ha sido posible por la confianza que están teniendo en la formación de talento en las universidades tecnológicas. Yo los invito a que se acerquen a estas universidades tecnológicas. Si no conocen ustedes de las capacidades que tenemos, con mucho gusto, si ustedes me permiten, a través de CANIETI, pudiéramos hacer llegar información de dónde están estas instituciones educativas, con cuántos estudiantes certificados cuentan, porque ahorita rápidamente les platiqué el tema de iCarnegie, pero en el subsistema de universidades tecnológicas tenemos centros de certificación en otras áreas. Estamos trabajando el tema de robótica, estamos trabajando el tema con National Instrument, estamos tratando de tener a la altura de las necesidades de los sectores empresariales de nuestro país estas capacidades y el talento que ustedes requieren. Yo me siento muy complacida de haber tenido el privilegio de compartirles en pocos minutos, porque me dijeron que tenía que ser así. Sé que la rapidez es una virtud, pero tiene un vicio que es la prisa, y espero que haya sido más bien rápido y no deprisa. Muy buenos días.
Gil, please. Vamos a entregar unos reconocimientos a Gil y a la licenciada por parte de Víctor, nuestro presidente, por haber acompañado aquí en la convención. No hay.
Buenos días a todos. Primero, permítame reconocer a la rectora, Beatriz, porque sabemos que hizo un viaje reciente de Houston, ayer mismo en la noche, para estar aquí hoy con nosotros temprano, y también por todo el esfuerzo en su gestión para lograr el incremento de profesionales certificados en temas que la industria requiere en la universidad que usted lleva. Rectora. And thank you to Gil for the same reasons, because he arrived yesterday from Africa to be here with us. Thank you, Gil, for this effort for us.
Thank you so much.